Hi, this is Tracy Rich from Judaism 101, jewfaq.org. This is part 3 of the Hebrew alphabet. We've broken the back of it now, seen more than half of the letters in Hebrew, and you'll find that most of the vocabulary in this part uses letters that we've already seen. So we'll be sounding out all of the words as we go along. The 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is ayin. Ayin is silent, like aleph. Ayin dips just a little bit below the baseline of the text. That's an unusual feature. You don't see that in other letters except maybe in a fancy font. Ayin is the first letter of the word olam, which can mean universe, as in the phrase melech haolam, ruler of the universe, or it can mean eternity, as in leolam vaed, forever and ever. Ayin, cholam vav, lamed, kametz, and final mem. O, lam, olam. Let's look at a few more vowels so you can read some more words. This is segol, which makes the short E sound in the word bed. The vowel appears twice in the word melech, which means king or ruler. Mem, segol, lamed, segol, and final kaf with a shva. Me, lech, melech. Like patach and kametz, segol sometimes appears with a shva, making a new vowel called chataf segol, half segol. It makes the same short E sound, but it never gets the emphasis. It's the first vowel in the word emunah, which means faithfulness or fidelity. Aleph, chataf segol, mem, shurek, nun, kametz, and hey. Emu, na, emunah. Next is tsere. It's pronounced like the A in neighbor or they. Sometimes it's followed by a yud that doesn't have a vowel of its own. When you see that, the yud is part of the tsere vowel and isn't pronounced separately. And that's the way I learned it, and that's the way I hear it in America, but I gather that in Israel, it's pronounced A when it has a yud, and E when it doesn't have a yud. Tsere appears in the word amen, a common response to prayer. Aleph, kametz, mem, tsere, and final nun. A-men, amen. But Israelis would pronounce that amen as we do in English. Tsere with a yud appears in the word aleinu, the name of a well-known prayer that's near the end of every synagogue service. The word itself just means on us, which is the first word of the prayer. Ayin, kametz, lamed, tsere with the yud, nun, and shurech. A-le-nu, aleinu. The next vowel is chirek, which is a single dot under the letter. Chirek makes an E sound like the double E in meat, or the I in machine. It's usually transliterated as an I, but it's sometimes transliterated as a double E to make the pronunciation more clear. Like tsere, it's sometimes followed by a yud that becomes part of the vowel. Also like tsere, some people say it's pronounced differently when it has a yud than when it doesn't. Some say it's pronounced as a short I in sit when it doesn't have a yud, and as the I in machine when it does have a yud. But I don't always hear it that way. There's a chirek in the name David, the name of the great king of Israel. Dalet, kametz, vav, chirek, dalet, da, vid, David. Chirek yud appears in the word chayim, which means life. Chet, patach, yud, chirek yud, final mem. Chay, yim, chayim. By the way, the ending of this word, chirek yud final mem, usually indicates a masculine plural form, not so much in this word, but most of the time that's what it means. Next is pe. Pe makes the sound of P as in poke, or F as in fox. Like bet and kaf, which we've seen before, the dot inside tells you which way it goes. If there's a dot inside, it makes the P sound. If there's no dot, it makes the F sound, or if you prefer, you can think of that as the PH sound. Pe is the first letter in the word Pesach, the Hebrew name of the Passover holiday. Pe, segol, samech, patach, and chet. Pe, sach, Pesach. Pe without the dot, which makes the F sound, is sometimes called fe. It doesn't usually appear at the beginning of a word, but it appears in the middle of the word nefesh, which means soul. We've seen most of these letters. Nun, segol, pe without the dot, segol, and we haven't seen this one yet. Ne, fesh, nefesh. Pei is another letter that has a special final form. This is final pei. Like most final forms, it extends below the rest of the text. Final pei is the last letter in the name Yosef, Joseph, the favorite son of our forefather Jacob. Yud, Cholam Vav, Samech, Tzere, and final pei. Yo, Safe, Yosef. Next is tzadi. Tzadi makes a TZ sound or a TS sound that we don't really have in a single letter in English, but it's the same sound that you hear at the end of the word pants or nuts. It takes a little practice to get used to saying that at the beginning or middle of a word. Tzadi is sometimes confused with aleph or ayin. All of these letters have 2 points on the top, which other letters don't have. But you can tell them apart because aleph doesn't have a line on the bottom. Ayin has a line on the bottom, but it's diagonal and it tends to extend below the baseline. Ayin has 2 shafts that go all the way down, more or less straight. Tzadi really just has 1 shaft, and it goes diagonally from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. Tzadi is the first letter in the word tzedakah, which is usually translated as charity because it refers to helping the poor, but the word actually means righteousness, because helping the poor is the right thing to do, not just a nice thing to do. We've seen most of the letters in this word: tzadeh, shuvah, dalet, kametz, we haven't seen this one yet, and another kametz, and hey, tzedakah, tzedakah. Tzadeh also has a final form. Like most final forms, it extends below the baseline. Final tzadeh is the last letter in the word eitz, which means tree, as in the popular liturgical song Eitz Chaim, Tree of Life. Ayin, tzere, and final tzadeh, eitz. The next letter is kuf. Kuf makes a sound like the K in kangaroo. Scholars often transliterate it as a Q to distinguish it from kaf, which also makes a K sound, and also because it comes from the same source as the letter Q in English, but it's usually transliterated as a K. Kuf kind of looks like a final form because it extends below the baseline, but actually kuf can appear anywhere in a word. Kuf is the only non-final letter that extends this far below the baseline. Kuf is the first letter in the word kadosh, which means holy. Kuf, kametz, dalet, cholam vav, and we haven't seen that one yet, but really there's not much left. We'll get to that one soon. Ka-dosh, kadosh. Okay, we're going to wrap up part 3 here. There are only 3 more consonants and 2 more vowels, but we'll cover those in part 4, along with a couple of other things. I'll finish with a little review. I'll show you 23 different Hebrew words that we've seen so far that you've seen all the letters of. I'll give you a second to look at the word before I tell you what it is and what it means. See if you can read the word and remember what it means. You may need to pause the video. Melech, which means king or ruler. Haggadah, the book that is read at Passover Seder. Olam, which means universe or eternity. Ani, which means I. Tzedakah, which means charity or righteousness. Lulav, which means date palm and refers to the collection of branches we wave at Sukkot. Eitz, which means tree. Kavod, which means glory or honor. Amen, a response to prayer. Aleinu, which means upon us and is the name of a well-known prayer. Yosef, which is the name Joseph. Chai, which means lives or living. Gadol, which means great. Pesach, the Hebrew name of the Passover holiday. Tov, which means good. Emunah, which means faithfulness or fidelity. Yom, which means day. Selah, another response to prayer. Kol, which means all. Chayim, which means life. Zaman, which means time. Bechol, which means with all. David, the name David. And that'll be all for this time. We'll finish up the alphabet next time and have a few other things.